let's look at a bit of the history of Title VII. I think this is an important thing to put the world in context as to what it was like back in 1964, and also then move forward into today to see how it's evolved. So we call it Title VII. Originally, it really was a matter of, we call it the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and then we turned it into a code, and when you put it in code inside the legal law books, you always put typically a title to it, especially if it's going to evolve a large body of different directions and instructions. So we call this one Title VII. You'll see that the 7 here is in Roman numerals, a VII, in other words, 7. Whenever you see Roman numerals, almost always it's in the context that it is a federal law. State and local laws use Arabic numerals rather than Roman numerals, so you'll see that difference over here. 1964 was the year that it was first written, but it's also been updated and had a couple other areas added to the aspect of Title VII that we now consider to be the entire body of it as well. There's a major update in 1991 and also some different aspects of it, the sections of it, including in the 1970s as well as 2011 as well. The focus is, it is about employment practice. That is the main focus of it. Now it goes past that, but really the issue was the individual race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It really focused in on those. They also tossed in the term creed, which is very similar to religion, but they wanted to focus in on having the race issue once and for all taken out of the context of the employment aspect of it. Okay, now we see things in a little bit different. We wanted to make certain there was no way to segregate things. You want to make certain that the employer didn't have a way to deprive people of the right to have access to jobs out there. Take a look at some of the ads in June of 1961. This is real, okay, and the reality is you have different aspects. You have male employment, female employment. Well, why not just employment? Why funeral notices and then funeral notice colored? Okay, so you have different aspects of it. To some extent, you're paying attention to a certain demographic, but why? They're just people like everybody else, except we did not act as a society in that manner. You'll see over here colored employment as well. So on one side, you have male-female employment, a segregation that way, and then on top of that, then you have colored employment. Why? What was different about it? The money was different, the working conditions were different. They were not treated the same. It was time for us to step up from 1864. It only took us 100 years to figure this out, that we needed to sit down and treat everybody equal. So that's where this came out. It really was the vision of President John F. Kennedy. He came out with it, and he was actually assassinated somewhere along the line in the process. And then LBJ took this as his passion to fulfill this manifest destiny of really JFK in the process. So you'll see actually he carried the torch forward with this, and it really focused into a national law. So we call it Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1864. It's about employment, and it prohibits discrimination in the workplace on race, color, gender, religion, and national origin. It applies to hiring. It applies to all aspects of employment, to discharge, to how you compensate people with money or other benefits, terms, conditions, or privilege. It really forbids segregation and unequal opportunities, and it's been reinforced time and time and time again. This is now part of our body of law that we have in the United States. The amendments we had to it, to the Act, the Equal Employment Opportunity Act, which created the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, that was done in 1972. We also added the Pregnancy Discrimination Act. It really set down an interpretation of intended coverage, extended into sex, but the sex was also include pregnancy in the process. So you have those things added to it as well. And then in 1991, instead of just a government agency being the censor, also the courts could become that too. They added the ability of people to sue over civil rights violations, and also they added the other aspect of reverse discrimination actions as well. Reverse discrimination is when somebody that is viewed as a non-originally class of race or whatever color, then we change the aspect to sit down and include everybody in it rather than just a few chosen aspect of it. So it also included U.S. People that are abroad as well. So you have a couple cases out there, landmark decisions. They're in your textbook. I want you to know them. Green and Griggs, it framed the aspect of disparate treatment and the impact claims. That's in Chapter 2. The Meritor Savings case, it established harassment as a form of discrimination to create a hostile work environment. And really, the aspect of the EOC, it extends sex discrimination to protections in transgender and sexual orientation claims. That is out there. Okay, you'll also see that the Supreme Court also extended the word sex to cover people of same-sex marriages as well as part of that. So you have a couple things in the aspect of what it really comes down to. Sexual orientation is also included here. Some of the aspects of the different things that we learned about Title VII and the evolution, it really is originally an employment law. It became also a harassment law. Now we're seeing a rise in religious claims coming forward. You're seeing retaliations out there as well. You're seeing the aspect of diversity, equity, inclusion claims. You're seeing unconscious bias that are out there as well. So there's a whole new body of things that have been brought into, and some of the stuff will be contested politically, except for the fact there's two areas that you'll probably see a rise in the next several years. Number one, we're going to see an increase in religious discrimination claims more and more because this is becoming a hot button issue with a lot of Americans. Secondly, probably the most discriminated group today is a matter of age. Age discrimination is huge in the process as well. We'll see some changes in that as well. So overall, look here on the different claims filed. I think the numbers are very telling. Gender, 30.6%. Disability, 37%. Race, 34%. Age, 21%. National origin, 10%. Color, 5.7%. Religion, 3%. The Equal Pay Act, just over 1%. Genetic information, which is really a troubling aspect. I am a full-blown capitalist and I fully support it, except every once in a while we get caught up in the aspect of trying to pinch a penny to sit there and increase the bottom line. Genetic information was being used by insurance companies. They would require all new employees that were covered by them, not just in their companies, but companies that they insured, to go through a genetic screening background to see if the women were subject to a family gene that could cause breast cancer. If they were, they would exclude the woman from coverage, even though she didn't have cancer at all. I don't know. Somehow that makes me, my skin kind of shrivel up and shrink over that. Really? So Congress stepped in and they added genetic information to this as well. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And even though it's a teeny tiny percent, it's just about as egregious as it comes. Anyway, so that said, the history, the original focus, employment, it applies to hiring, discharge, compensation, conditions of employment, and to some extent it's wage, hours, working conditions. The EEOC was added in 1972, and the Pregnancy and Discrimination Act was added to it as well in 1978. That's the historical background of Title VII that's critical to know the context so you know what, when, why, and where it's all about. Take care.